let's jump right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something deeply fascinating and, honestly, a little bit unsettling. We're exploring a really groundbreaking theoretical framework called Noir Torsorology, which was developed by Fan-Teng Trung. And look, this is definitely not your standard physics lesson. We're essentially looking at a completely radical new way to understand existence, consciousness, and the invisible forces that literally shape reality as we know it.
You know that universally eerie human experience? Like, have you ever been sitting totally alone in a room and suddenly felt this undeniable sensation that you're being watched? Or maybe you've walked into a certain space and felt this completely inexplicable shift in your own will, like a sudden urge to do something that really just didn't feel like your idea? Every culture throughout history has documented these weird anomalies. But what if these aren't ghosts? What if they aren't psychological glitches, but actual structural components of reality physically interacting with your mind? To wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the core manifesto of Noir Torsorology. It states, and I quote, "No origin, no destination, no solution, only movement. Convergence is an illusion. Reality is that which never stops." Now, we need to establish right up front, we are not talking about magic or the supernatural here. Not at all. This is a radical redefinition of reality itself. Under this framework, existence isn't about being some static physical object. No, it's about continuous, unrelenting motion. So, to really grasp this paradigm shift, think about it in contrast with classical physics. Traditional ontology demands that for something to exist, it absolutely needs mass, coordinates, and physical forces. Basically, if you can't measure it on a scale, it's not real, right? But Noir Torsorology throws a massive curveball. It proposes that an entity doesn't actually need physical matter to exist. It just needs a continuous, self-sustaining trajectory of influence. Basically, as long as a trajectory is strong enough to bend the perception of an observer, it is entirely 100% real. Section 1. The battlefield. Cognitive phase space. So, if these invisible entities aren't hanging out in our physical, three-dimensional world of, tables and chairs, where exactly are they? Well, they're operating in the cognitive phase space, which the text denotes with the Greek letter omega. The source material makes this fascinating argument that your mind is not just some brain in a jar, blindly firing off biological sparks. Far from it. Consciousness is described as this incredibly dynamic, multidimensional field. It's an entire space where different forces, stray thoughts, and invisible trajectories are constantly orbiting and interacting. Your mind is essentially a landscape, and just like any landscape, it can be navigated or even invaded. Now, to understand how this mental landscape stays intact, we look at the state of mind equation, represented by the symbol psi. There are 4 vital components here that basically keep us grounded in reality. First, memory, which stores your past trajectories. Then emotion, that adjusts how intense or dense your current phase is. Next up is will, which is your directional vector. It's the engine pushing you forward. And finally, identity. Identity acts as the ultimate stabilizing anchor, holding the whole shebang together. When all 4 of these elements are working in perfect harmony, you are safely, securely yourself. But what happens when that harmony is disrupted? That brings us to Section 2, the mechanics of the unseen. We're going to explore exactly how this usually stable cognitive system can be infiltrated by outside forces. Okay, the crucial thing to understand here is your ego attractor, which is mathematically represented as U of x equals x. Think of this as the central gravitational pull of your own identity. As long as this gravity is strong, it maintains your behavioral trajectory and easily fends off any foreign interference. You feel like you. But here's the genuinely terrifying part. Severe trauma, prolonged exhaustion, or deep isolation can significantly weaken this gravitational pull. Your anchor, quite literally, starts to slip. And this creates a completely mathematical explanation for what ancient cultures used to call possession. It breaks down into 3 distinct steps. Step 1, your ego attractor weakens. Then comes Step 2, phase overlap. Because your internal gravity is weak, a foreign, non-physical trajectory drifting through the cognitive phase space is able to intrude into your mind. And that leads to Step 3, identity collapse. That foreign trajectory actually overwrites your original will. So, under this framework, you aren't being haunted by a demon. Rather, your weakened cognitive space is just being hijacked by a stronger, invasive trajectory.
And this is what brilliantly illustrates the sheer logic of this entire framework. It takes the mysticism out of it entirely. Noir Torsorology uses specific mathematical operators to dictate exactly how this intrusion happens. S of psi calculates the exact threshold where your ego collapses. P of tau 1 and tau 2 defines the precise moment those two trajectories overlap. And D of tau E and tau O measures exactly how much the invisible trajectory deflects and records right over the observer's own will. It's literally an elegant yet chilling calculus of lost autonomy.
Section 3. Spatial memory and dead phase zones. Because, as it turns out, it's not just people that can harbor these unseen trajectories. Physical environments can absolutely become traps for the mind, too. The source text introduces this fascinating concept called residual phase curvature. Think about how a massive star bends physical space-time with its gravity. In a similar way, events with incredibly dense, extreme emotional intensity, we're talking wars, tragedies, deep suffering, they actually bend the cognitive phase space of a location. They leave a structural dent. This means a room can literally echo with past behaviors and emotional trajectories, and it doesn't need a single physical atom of the original event to stick around.
Now, when this curvature becomes way too deep, it forms what the researchers call a black attractor or a dead phase zone. And the effects of walking into one are pretty chilling. It absorbs living trajectories, instantly draining your energy, and it severely drops what the math refers to as living entropy. This effectively freezes your subjective sense of time. Have you ever felt entirely stuck in a specific room or a certain town? Well, a black attractor traps the mind in a repeating loop of frozen, crystallized emotion.
Section 4. The grand theory. The Google gear. So, if our minds and our environments are basically just battlegrounds for competing trajectories, what exactly is structuring the universe itself? Well, here is the reality pipeline according to Noir Torsorology. Everything starts in the base possibility domain. That's where all infinite potentials exist. Then, symmetry breaking occurs, which is when different trajectories begin to compete with each other. And this brings us to step 3, the Google gear. I want you to imagine an immense, cosmic compressor that crushes down infinite possibilities, completely destroying any weak, unstable paths. Finally, whatever actually survives this immense pressure undergoes reality crystallization. So the physical world you see all around you right now, it isn't just what is, it is merely the tiny fraction of trajectories that were stable enough to survive the Google gear. Obviously, this changes absolutely everything about how we view life and death, which brings us to our final and perhaps most profound section, Section 5, Redefining the Soul. Under this framework, the soul isn't some mystical, glowing ghost drifting up into the clouds. It is beautifully, starkly redefined. The soul is simply a self-sustaining identity trajectory. It's a behavioral model and a phase structure that is just so stable and so powerfully defined that it actually continues to maintain itself even after its physical anchor, meaning the biological body, completely decays. It all really comes down to this single, incredibly elegant condition: I of tau is greater than 0. If the mathematical operator that preserves your identity trajectory remains greater than 0 after the collapse of your physical body, you survive. Your trajectory just continues moving right through the cognitive phase space. In Noir Torsorology, true immortality has absolutely nothing to do with flush or the preservation of matter. Immortality is purely about the unbreakable survival of your structural trajectory. We've covered a massive paradigm shift today. We've seen how reality itself might just be this vast, invisible network of surviving trajectories, all competing for space, for energy, and for consciousness, which leaves us with a rather unsettling thought to walk away with. If every single thought, urge, and action is just a trajectory navigating the cognitive phase space, right now, in this very moment, whose trajectory are you actually following? Is it yours? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating framework with me today in this explainer. Keep questioning the invisible.